Why is adoption an unpopular option? Let's talk about it.
This is a topic that's dear to my heart, and I am so happy to have Regina Martin on the couch with us this evening from the company Koinonia, where she's going to help us understand the adoption option. So, oftentimes in the office, when a woman comes in with a positive pregnancy test, especially the unplanned pregnancies, we go through a discussion about what are their options. So, we talk about the three options, which is parenting, abortion, and adoption, and various women will make different choices depending on what's going on in their life at that time. And I will say that the least popular option has been adoption. And so my question that I'm hoping we'll be able to answer this evening is, why is adoption so low on the list? Why is, for example, abortion an easier option versus adoption? So Regina, I'm happy to have you here to help us understand.
Hope I can.
So one of the things I wanted to get from your perspective, what do you think is some of the misconceptions people have about adoption to begin with?
Well, interestingly enough, I'm somewhat surprised, at what you're saying, because most of the women that I deal with, that's why they come to me. They want to adopt. And mind you, Koinonia Family Services is a foster to adoption agency. So it's a little bit different, because all of our placements are foster first, prior to adopting. But as I tell everybody, I'd say 100% of the people who've come to me that wanted to adopt ended up adopting. Now, it may not have been on that first, second, or even third placement, but they did it. And the more open they were about their choices and things like that, it seems like for some reason things just kind of fell into place and adoption just happened sooner rather than later. But so maybe those ladies, I guess, have gone already through the processing of the options or maybe the other options, and then coming to adoption as being not so bad. One of the things I do hear a lot of is, what happens if it falls through,
Right.
or they don't love me the way I'm expecting them to. It's or maybe I won't feel the same way about the adopted child as I would my own. Some things like that. But for
How
the
do you
most
help them
part,
work through how do you help them work through those emotions? Because I think that's very real. I think I definitely heard people say that they're concerned, especially about whether or not their child would love them. How do you help them through that process?
let me back up, because what I find more so is this child going to meet my needs? And so what we try to do is, like, how am I going to feel if this child rejects me, or doesn't bond with me right away, or doesn't fit in our family, or those kinds of things. So what we try to do is get them to think, from the perspective of, what can I do to enhance this child's life? Kind of come out of the me, and go into the child. Because that way, regardless, you're going to help somebody, you're going to help them. And it may not be right away, depending on the age of the child. Because say, if, for instance, if it's a teen, and has been through a lot of life experiences, maybe that teen may not show you the gratitude or the love that you feel like you're looking for. Or if it's a baby, maybe there's some kind of bonding thing that you're expecting that just doesn't happen right away. So what we do is just, first of all, listen, and then try to get people to just kind of come out of themselves and look beyond themselves and into the child's life, and feed into that child, pour into that child, give, nurture, love, support that child. And then surprisingly, when a person comes out of themselves, they tend to, get back really what they've been looking for in the beginning, all along.
So it sounds like the mindset and the perspective of the potential parents is really important, really shifting from a me mindset, which sounds like parenting to me. You guys correct me, parents on the panel, shifting from that me mindset to that child, that perspective of putting the child first. And I guess that's a transition that happens for moms at some point when you're pregnant, going through that pregnancy process. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. Or and I guess through adoption, it's a little bit more automatic.
Well,
Or more
from my
expected to be
perspective
more
as a,
immediate, I should say. Let me correct myself.
I'm sorry.
Now I was saying,
I'm
or
sorry.
the anticipation is that it's going to be more immediate when people are looking towards adoption. It sounds like.
I think that's the mindset that they have, that it's going to be immediate. And then sometimes it really isn't, because I think it's just a matter of expectations. And so what we try to do in our training is to introduce ways to manage those expectations and to discuss it. We also have a lot of support groups after, and well, all along actually. A lot of talking, a lot of listening to try to get to the meat of things and those feelings, and address those issues before they become, a problem. Because it is, I mean, it's just, there's no guarantee, I mean, I have 2 children of my own. I have, they're adults, and I have 3 grandchildren. And I didn't babysit, before. I didn't have my kids early. I'm an old grandmother, but I did it, kind of in the time frame that worked for me. But it wasn't easy. And even when the baby, my first baby was born, I did like her. Fortunately, I didn't have. I mean, I had some postpartum feeling, for a little while, but not too severe. But not severe at all, actually. But
like postpartum blues, like a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. There was a couple of weeks in there that I felt a little strange, but it wasn't, but I remember when I had my first grandbaby, my daughter. I remember she was living in another state, and I went to help out, and she brought the baby to me. And I was just telling Karen earlier that when, something different about the whole grandmother thing. It's something special about that.
I've heard.
It's wonderful. But I remember her bringing me the baby, and she kind of gave her to me, and she had this glazed over look. And I probably had the same glazed over look at some point, when I had her too. But so I didn't say anything, I just took the baby and tended to her for a while, and then I just gave her back. And but she and I have discussed that before. So it's a very real thing. I mean, a lot of moms, feel that, and they don't feel that instant bond with, that you hear about, this going to happen. But and all of that's unique too. But it's all those hormones, and well, you guys know. And so
yeah, and I see our other moms on the panel nodding your heads. What do you guys think about the bonding process that happens? That, like, how was your bonding with your kids? You laugh.
Or lack thereof.
Go ahead, Karen.
No, go ahead. Go. You first.
Yeah, I mean, bonding, I didn't really feel like I liked my daughter that much until she was like 3. But bonding, as far as, taking care of the daily activities, and you are like, I love them. I'm just not sure I like how it's changed my life. And so I always loved her, but I wasn't sure that I liked her. And that was very distressing for a long time, actually. Trying to figure out, like, what was wrong with me? Why didn't I have that feeling that so many women have,
Right.
Like, oh, I never knew love like this before. It's completed my life. I was like, oh, I feel like it ruined mine.
All those social media posts, right? All those social media posts.
Yeah. With my son, with my second, it was better. I mean, I think, but the shock of how motherhood changed my life, that I had already gotten over that. So I realized I never liked change. I'm always slow to change. I didn't think that that was going to happen with motherhood as well. So once my son came along 3 years later, I was like, okay, it's not such a change. So I adjusted better.
What was
It's
your
tough. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, Regina. What were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say it's tough. I mean, I chose to have children later because I wanted to get all my run out, so when I had them, I was completely ready. I didn't want to feel like I was missing out on anything because I had a lot of friends who had kids younger. And when they hit, a certain age, it was like they just kind of went, fuck, wow. So I think that I saw that I wanted to do it a little different, not saying it was right, or better, but that's just the way I wanted to do it. So when I did it, but I still, there was like, I remember that first Mother's Day and I'm getting up and getting ready and bathing her and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, this is no fun. And it took me about 4 years. So I was thinking about you, Olivia. Maybe when I remember she was 4 years old. She and my husband at that time, he took me out to dinner or whatever. And I thought, oh, this is kind of nice, but what didn't happen until for 4 years. So it was just like the routine and,
Yeah.
you just do all that stuff. But then too, there it goes with me, but I was okay with caring for her and, diapering and cleaning and doing all that stuff. I didn't really regret it, but it wasn't what I thought, it was different.
Yeah.
It was
It was, and that's why I wonder about the parents that come to you for adoption. You mentioned that there's a training. So what is that like? What's the process of getting one? Do you screen them? I'm assuming there's some type of screening process. What is that like?
Well, again, like I said, ours is foster first. So everybody does foster first until the judge, hits that gavel. It's not an adoptive placement. However, our process is foster to adopt. So our families are approved adoption ready. So at any time that that switch changes, in the court system, that family, if they're willing, can take the child as their own. Well, start the process to take the child as their own. It is lengthy. It can go quicker depending on the person's diligence with paperwork. But as far as the training, there's an orientation in the beginning, a couple hours. Then there's a video training that's 5 hours after that. You can't submit an application until after the orientation. Then there's a 5-hour video. Then there's a 8-hour resource parent training. And we had to chop it up because of the pandemic, because we're doing everything virtually. And sitting in front of the computer for 8 hours was gruesome. So we chopped it up into 2 days. And there's a lot of things. There's the first aid CPR. There's medical exams you have to do. There's DMV reports. There's live scans. Fingerprinting.
It can take 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah, it could take a minute.
It 6 to 8 months is our average.
That part, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the average, but there's a lot of people that can do it faster.
Wow.
And then, once the placement is made, you get, remember, that's still a foster placement for us from our standpoint. Now we do have an adoptions department that's fairly new. So if a child is already identified, say if there's a guy in your life, or husband or whatever, and you want to adopt that, say his child is your own, or vice versa, we can assist with those kinds of things, and those are more rapid. But if the child is coming through the Department of Children and Family Services route, then it's just a longer thing, because sometimes you have to, well, most times you have to go through the process of the biological parents getting their parental rights terminated, and it's just a lot of legality.
So help us understand that. Are these open adoptions? Like, how does it work if you're going from foster to adoption? Are the parents still at all involved, or?
Once the adoption occurs,
Mhm.
Okay, well, they're involved in the beginning, usually, yes. And then if they want their kids back, of course, they're trying to get that, make that happen. But then there are sometimes when the parents are, their lives are just so twisted up that they can't make that happen. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to make it happen, but they just can't. They cannot get it together.
Mhm.
So, we look at it from the standpoint of, our families are going to, stand in the gap for them until to see if they can get it together. If they can, wonderful, because that would be our first uh, choice. But if that can't happen, then our families, are ready to stand in, take over, and be the adoptive parent. It's great when when our parents can build a bridge
Mhm.
with the bio parent, because we also in our training show that, just because you are providing maybe a better home, prettier home in a nicer neighborhood, does not mean that those children don't love their biological families.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean that they don't love you too. I mean, and I always look from a standpoint, a child can't get too much love. And I look at my own personal situation because I was born to a single mom.
Mhm.
I have a biological father, and she got married when I was 2. Um, her husband adopted me, and I've actually carried his name all my life. Still do, that's
Oh.
my middle name now. But that marriage didn't last. So they divorced, and then she married my stepfather when I was 8. So my stepfather, when I refer to my father or my dad, usually that's who I'm talking about, is
Mhm.
my stepfather. And he said, hey, I'll adopt her, she changed my name. And it's like, wait a minute, that's just too many name changes here. So we didn't do that. But he's the man that put in the work. And this is what I always tell people, it's usually the parent that puts in the work is the one that gets the most respect, and maybe not, probably more the most love too. But it doesn't mean that you can't love. I mean, I love all 3 of them. I had great grandparents. I have 3 grandmas and great grandmas and cousins and all these families, and a child just can't get too much love. So I never really felt like, I was, misplaced or anything. I had a great childhood and all of that. So you
Yeah.
know, it's just
Yeah,
kind of
very different experiences. Let me ask you a question, Regina, about the ethnic breakdown of the kids that are in the foster home
Mhm.
and the parents that come to adopt. What is that like? Do you see any differences?
Well, okay. So the parents that come to, well, I do see fewer Black parents um, where I am stepping up to adopt. I'm seeing more now. I've been with this agency for 25 years. Um, I've seen less, and actually, yeah, I definitely have seen less Black parents coming through the process. There was a time where I hardly had any, and there were mostly other ethnicities adopting our kids. And when I say our kids, I mean, Black kids. Um, but then I have other ethnicities that say, I don't care, just give me the kids, I want to help. Um,
How do you deal with how do you guys address those ethnic differences? Like if you have one racial group, because there are cultural differences in how kids may have already been raised and
Mhm.
now they're going into a family that's a different ethnicity. How do you address that? How do you help them with the transition?
It's usually individual. It's because the cultural differences tend to be those, we may have an Asian family with a Black child. This is just, off the top
Hmm.
of my head. But if that Black child has been with this Asian family, since, before they could talk, their culture really is Asian because this is what they've grown up, their foods, their customs, all those kinds of things.
Hmm.
Um, what we
about the
try to
teenagers?
do, I'm sorry.
What about the teenagers?
Well, the teenagers, that's a different story. But you know, what we try to do is encourage the families to, if they can, you know, in the beginning, get to know the family of origin, find out, you know, like what these kids like, because they know more about those children than the new family. You know, try to incorporate, well, with a teenager, you can have them teach you how to cook, you know, maybe they could start it, and they may not be doing it perfectly, but they could say, you know, I like, I remember there was a little girl, a black girl that was with a Hispanic family once, and she was telling them, you know, she wanted some chitlins. And so the Hispanic lady, she said, she told me, she's, I
They
want some
eat
chitlins,
it
you know?
just differently, right?
Yes, they do.
Olivia?
They, you know, yep. And so that's what we had a conversation about. So anyway, and
Just
so
differently, and it's
the
good.
foster parent didn't know how to prepare it that way, you know. So actually, I kind of directed her, you know, down the street. We were in Carson at the time, to M&M's, and I said, just go down there, you know, have a conversation with the cook. You know, they could probably, you know, walk you through that process. And if you don't want to cook it, you can at least, you know, take her down there and have some, you know. But so we have really candid conversations. We brought in, you know, all kinds of, like, say for Black kids, girls, we brought in hairdressers to give, you know.
Now
there's
that's a
lot
big
of-
deal. That's the
Oh
big
yeah,
deal
it's a
right
big deal.
there. Oh
It's
yeah.
a big deal. And but I'm telling you, I have seen wonderful. There was a missionary. I guess you'd call him a missionary. It was a couple, and they took over a church over in Watts. And there was a Caucasian family. They had several Black kids in their home, and they of course lived in a Black neighborhood. Well, she came to a couple of the sessions that we had on Black hair care, and she turned around. She did far better than I've ever done. I mean, she
I
really
love
did.
it.
She was awesome, you know.
I love it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, you know, just investing that time and researching. We're there to help and introduce to is, you know, the families to as much as we can, you know.
Yeah.
And,
What do you ladies think about the other aspect of adoption? The fact that women are less likely to choose adoption as an option for an unplanned pregnancy. What do you ladies think about that, especially women of color? What do you think is behind that?
Tasker, repeat the last part of that question one more time.
Sure. What do you think about the fact that women of color are also least likely to choose adoption as an option when they are faced with an unplanned pregnancy? I get a
It's
lot of
maybe
women
because
who
they're not educated about it.
you think that's what it is, Karen? Go
They
ahead.
probably, by me just sitting here listening to Regina, that was very educational to hear about that, because I probably would think that way, like adoption, no, I probably get an abortion or something like that, then do, you know, go through the whole thing and then adopt. But they're not educated about it. That's probably what that would be too, to let a life still live, regardless if you can provide for it or not.
well, you know, one thing
I think a lot of Black women are still holding on to finding love for themselves and holding out for finding the one for themselves, and then having their happily ever after as well. And then we also got to understand that the laws didn't always favor people of color adopting. Only recently have laws passed that have expanded the adopting and fostering laws. Like gays, you know, single people can do it. The gay population can now adopt, because at one point there were laws that didn't allow you to adopt. If you weren't married, you couldn't adopt. So everybody could adopt Black kids at some point, except for Black people themselves. So I think it's also very important to understand and talk about the laws that also prevented the expansion of foster adopting amongst people of color. And I think Ms. Martin is right as well in regards to there's, you know, transracial adoptions, there's transcultural ones. I remember when I worked for the Children's Services in Columbus, we actually made a booklet because I used to do child welfare and we did home visits. I worked adoptions and foster care. And so parents went through the training by itself was like 6 to 8 weeks, just the training, not talking about what Ms. Martin said, that does lead to like 6 to 8 months, but training classes. And we made a booklet, like the basics of cultural norms you should know. Like when you walk into a home of Muslim or Islamic house, you take your shoes off. If you're walking into a Hispanic home, know who to greet first and whom to talk to first. Avert your eyes. So we did a lot of those types of trainings, and I think those are also important to talk about in regards to, you know, the whole aspect of adoption. But I still think in regards to Black women, a lot of us sometimes are holding out to you know, keeping hope alive that they will find their one.
Okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
in terms of going to adopt a child, you mean? Yeah, I got you. Uh-huh. Olivia, you had a comment? I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I was just gonna say also, I think for some women, you know, especially unplanned pregnancies, the reality of carrying a baby to term to then give it up is very hard for some women. Some women feel, I think some people feel like they couldn't do it. And so I think that that's an aspect too for some people. It's like, oh God, like I know I don't want this baby. Maybe I don't want my partner to even know that I got pregnant. You know, sometimes sexuality and pregnancy can be used as a form of abuse for some women, right? So, you know, taking women's reproductive rights away to the ability to say, no, I don't want to get pregnant again and things like that. So I think sometimes it's a little bit layered as to why they don't think that adoption is a possibility. And also, I think a lot of people are afraid of putting their baby in the system. If you don't have like a person in mind to say, yeah, I'm going to give birth and I'm going to put
That's an
my
interesting
baby,
point.
yeah, give my baby to somebody. The system is no joke. The system, like Chastity and Regina have said, I mean, it's slanted, it's corrupted in some ways. I think they can do some really great things another time. So I think there's that too. You're like, I don't want to bring a baby into the world and then be like, peace, and hopefully it's a good luck. You
You
know,
know, that's really something that I haven't even thought of in a long time about why we don't do that. But I've been asked so many times, why don't why don't Black people, families, singles, before it got popular, chastity, like you said, why don't we have more Black families that are stepping up to take care of these kids? And what I did know for sure is that a lot of times the Black family was already full, you know, was already impacted because they, you know, taken, you know, the nieces and the, cousin Susie's child, and, you know, I got, 10 of my own, and, it was just no space, So I
Yeah,
knew
good point.
that, but that's a really, it's a shame to say, but it's the truth. I hadn't thought about, that how many of us have chosen to have, with those unplanned pregnancies, have chosen the route, but never even thought about, well, maybe I should try to find an adoptive, family, or mom, or probably family. At the time I was, becoming a mom, but good point. I mean,
And I think these are all. Go ahead, Chastity.
I was going to say the latter part of all of that is if you decide to give your child up for adoption, coming to terms with when your kid is 18, wanting to find you, wanting to get to know you, are you going to be prepared for that conversation? And will you in fact, quote unquote, reject that child again by saying, hey, I don't want contact, not because you don't want contact, maybe you're not prepared to answer the question why, you gave that child up for adoption. So I think the latter part of this discussion is scary to do so. It's fear, and it's coming to terms with the reality of I gave my kid up for adoption, and they could at a certain age, find out about me, learn about me, and want to get to know me. So that part can be very intimidating and scary, especially depending on the circumstance, like Olivia was talking about, in which you gave your child up for adoption, having to explain that as well.
And it happened, and that's going to happen. They're going to come looking for you,
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think also in terms of resources, I think resources affect us on both sides. So resources in terms of a lot of Black women are single. Number one, the numbers are out there, whether intentionally single or not intentionally single. And so then taking on the responsibility of raising a child may seem like a lot, especially when our resources are already taxed. And then on the other end, resources in terms of thinking about, okay, what do I need to, resources in terms of carrying a pregnancy, and maybe your job will be affected, taking time off from work, to go through the process of pregnancy and recovery from pregnancy. And some women just don't have the ability financially to do that. And I think that may also play into the decision to adopt, but to abort versus adoption. But I definitely do like the comment also that Olivia made, the fact that the bonding with the child, the ability to disconnect quicker from an earlier pregnancy versus a pregnancy where you felt you probably started to communicate and bond on some level with the child is really, really key as well. Karen, did you have any last comments about it?
One comment is, back on what Chastity said, if, once they turn 18, do those kids, can they come to your company? Or is there another company out there that helps them to find their biological parent?
Well, once an adoption occurs with us, we don't really do we don't have a tracking system, beyond the families that just kind of keep on adopting and keep on fostering. We kind of see those kids, into adulthood. But for the most part, a lot of people come, they're one and done. They just want to get that adoption done and they're out. We don't see them. But the ones that we have influenced by, encouraging them to stay in touch and build bridges and things like that, yes. But I'm sorry, I just had a little bit of a brain fart here.
Oh, no problem.
But yeah, so it's, it just all depends. But the one thing, what you were saying earlier about the,
Resources.
what about the kids coming to look for the parents?
Oh,
So for instance, like this year, I've heard 3 people that I know really well, that have, one was a teen pregnancy. And I think I don't know if that was and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, because I don't know everything. But
okay.
What I do know is that it seemed like when we were younger, the Catholic Church kind of had like a really strong adoptions network or something. And so anyway, so a real different friend of mine was, involved in, she got pregnant at maybe 16 or something. So, and she and the dad really wanted to have the baby, but the parents were like, oh no, no. So anyway, they arranged for the baby to be adopted. And all, and for so many years, she and the young boy would, get together on the date of the birth, and they would just meet, and so then they went into adulthood, and they just couldn't find him because it was, I guess, closed to a certain point. There's certain information, I guess, that was left behind should the child want to connect with that, once they got older. So this dear friend of mine, I mean, I know the pain that she's gone through with that. And over the years, now she's like me, in her 60s. And this year, her 50-year-old plus son, contacted her, found her. And oh my goodness, it's just, I was so happy for her because I know the pain that she went through for so many years. It wasn't that she didn't want to reach out or find him, but it was, these records were sealed and all that kind of stuff, But
that's a precious story. We're gonna have to go, but we thank you for sharing that story with us. Regina, really quickly before you go, where can they reach you if the people want to find out more about adoption?
Okay. My phone, well, first of all, our office is located in the city of Gardena, 190th in Normandy. The phone number is 310-217-0930. Just hit number 3, and you'll find me. It'll find me on my cell wherever I am. It tracks me.
And the name of the company one more time?
Koinonia Family Services.
Awesome. And this is Dr. T, the hand behind Healthy Bump Club. See you on Instagram, YouTube. If you like this video, check out the other videos. Thank you to Regina for being on the couch with us this evening. You are
Thank you,
fabulous. And we
Thank
hope
you.
more.
A wealth of knowledge.
Absolutely. Let's adopt those kids, you guys. And I'm talking to myself too. See you guys next episode. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, ladies.
Bye, Miss Regina.
It's been a pleasure.
Same here.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We love that you are a part of our community, and we want you to continue to be a part of our community. So go ahead and do what? Like the videos, hit notification, and subscribe. We appreciate you guys.